On this channel, I do a lot of videos about the Twin Cities, what it's like to live in the Twin Cities, the cost of living in the Twin Cities, neighborhoods in the Twin Cities, that kind of thing. And truly, by design, what happens is people from out of state reach out to me and they say, hey, we want to live in the Twin Cities. And I say, great. And they go, how's that possible? How do we do that? It occurred to me, I have not done a video on how does that actually work. So that's what this video is. This video is, how do you buy a house in another state? How's it going, y'all? My name is Jesse Lynch. I'm a real estate agent here in the Twin Cities. I have two big passions that I put on this channel. That is showing off the Twin Cities, the place I live, the place I was born, the place that I love, and teaching people how to become homeowners, how to buy, sell, invest in real estate. So basically, this channel is devoted to all things living, working, playing, eating, sleeping, drinking, buying, selling, investing in real estate in the Twin Cities. So if any of that appeals to you, do us both a favor and subscribe to this channel. Click the little bell and you'll get notified. And hey, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this. Let's dive into this video, which fundamentally is, I'm moving to Minnesota. How do I buy a house from another state? The way that I see it, there's basically 5 scenarios in which you can move from another state to Minnesota and buy a house. And some of those, it's you buy a house right when you get here, and some of them you have to wait a little bit. So we're going to jump into that. The first one is that you can work remotely. And so that means basically, if you have a job that is already remote, that you work, everything's online, and you could work from a coffee shop, you could work from the Caribbean, you could work from your home in wherever it is you live, or you could move to Minnesota and do the same job, wouldn't be affected at all, then you're going to have the easiest time moving here, because a lender is going to look at you and say, okay, you're literally, your occupation, your employment has not changed at all. All right, fine, you're good to go. Disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a mortgage professional, I'm not a banker. This is not legal advice, this is not lending advice, this is just me telling my story about what I've seen so far, doing my best to educate you in whatever way that I can. But officially, I have to say, consult with a mortgage lender. If you need one, let me know. I can get you in touch with one. And if you're still not sure you can even get qualified, well, I have a video on this channel. Do yourself a favor and watch that. If you've never owned a home before, do yourself a favor, watch that first, and you'll get a good idea of whether or not you're even going to be able to buy a home once you do get here, or maybe you're going to have to rent if you move here. The second option would be a job transfer within the same company, and either a promotion or a lateral move where you make the same amount of money. If you take a pay cut, it's going to be a little trickier, a little less cut and dry, but lenders can work through that. As long as you're generally in the same job, in the same line of work, and it's consistent, and you're going to come over here and it's going to be full time, and your employer might have to provide a letter that says, yes, this person is indeed switching jobs or switching locations of the same job, and they will be living in Minnesota, and they will be full-time employees making the same amount of money as they were before, and then lenders should have very little problem with that. The third method is definitely trickier, but it is possible, and you would want to know a little bit ahead of time what you're doing. Okay, this third method, it's a little bit of 3D chess. It's going to take a little bit of fudging, but it's possible. So if you work at a job that you can't transfer out of, right? Say you work for a small company and it's a retail store, or it's a restaurant, or it's a consulting firm, and you want to move to Minnesota because you hear it's great, because you watch my videos and they're awesome and it shows how cool the Twin Cities is, but you want to move here, but you can't transfer jobs, you're not self-employed, you don't work remotely, you want to get a job in that field, but it's a little tricky if you just come here hoping you're going to get that job. So what you can do is you can get a job wherever you live. If you live in San Francisco and you don't want to be paying $42,000 a month on your mortgage payment or whatever it is, big numbers, that's all I know, and you want to come here, what you can do is find a job in the same field that you work in now. Restaurant, real estate, consulting, whatever it is, find a job that pays about the same or more as your last job, and it's a national company that you can transfer out of, okay? Right, so that's the play. You get a job in the same field, you work there for a little bit, and then you ask to transfer to where it is that you want to live, Minnesota, because it's awesome. And then that way, when a lender looks at your income and your employment history, you've had the same job in the same general field for the last 2 years. You switch jobs, but it's the same pay. You're going to come over here, and you can still be employed within the same field, within the same industry, and that's all good to go, okay? So that's the third method that you could do. And the fourth method will basically going to be applying for jobs in Minnesota remotely, right? You live in San Francisco, you pay $24 million every 2 months just to eat, and you want to move to Minnesota where prices are more reasonable. And so you begin to apply for jobs in the same industry that you're currently in. Closest to the job that you're currently in, the better. But in the same industry, especially if it is a promotion, then it can be within the same industry. And you get that job. Maybe you have to interview for it or whatever, but you get that job. And then that way you know you have the job. And then you can begin the home buying process because that all checks out, right? Cool. And then once you have the job lined up, if you can negotiate, hey, I'd like to start in 3 months, cool. But if they're like, hey, we need you in 2 weeks or whatever, then I think the move would be to get a temporary rental, something like an Airbnb or something like that, and then begin to transfer over that way. I know that's a lot easier said than done. You have a family and a partner and all your stuff, and you got to get it over there. But that would basically be the solution. And then maybe over the course of a few months, you can transfer over. But at least you know that you're not going to go end up somewhere where you have no job at all. Because I think that would be worse than the struggle and, a few months without your family or whatever. But that is all up to your risk tolerance, and I'm not you, so use your best judgment. You know how you feel about stuff. Act accordingly. The fifth move basically is that you just don't buy a house. You come here and you rent for a year. You find a job in a similar field, you begin to work there, and then a lender will say, okay, you moved here and then you got a job. And after whatever, a certain amount of time, they're gonna need pay stubs from this new job because some time lapsed, but it might be like 6 months. Then you're gonna buy a house. Year down the road, or maybe you can get a 6-month lease or a month-to-month lease, and then as soon as the lender gives you the green light, maybe that's not ideal. There's certainly some risk involved in moving before you have a job. But if you know that the move is right for you and you have maybe some savings where you have some fudge room to deal with, then maybe that's the right call for you. Obviously, all these things very much depend on you and your risk tolerance, and I don't want to assume that I know what's best for you or any of that. So it's important that you assess yourself and you look within and decide, is this the right move for me or not? Okay, so now that we know the financing side of things, what about how do you actually find the house when you're in another state, right? That could be a little tricky, but honestly, it shouldn't be that bad as long as you have a real estate agent that you trust, who you believe is going to be honest with you and who's going to work really hard for you, even though you're thousands of miles away or whatever it is. So step one to the whole thing is going to be getting pre-approved. To be honest, I don't know many real estate agents that would want to work with somebody from out of state who they can't even verify as pre-approved, who could potentially get a house in another area. Otherwise, that's a pretty big risk for a real estate agent. So I think going through some pre-approval process, making sure the lender is going to verify that you are who you say you are and that you can indeed buy a house, even if it's only, they can buy a house if all of these boxes are checked, but nonetheless, hey, let's get you headed in the right direction. Then a person like myself is going to be able to take the reins, and then the huge first step is going to be a lengthy conversation where everybody is very honest with each other and really does their absolute best to understand what it is that they need out of a house and out of a neighborhood, okay? In my opinion, if you're married, if you have kids, you're going to want to have this conversation with everybody. What do we want out of a house? What kind of a neighborhood do we want to live in? And that way you can tell your real estate agent, this is what we are looking for, this type of thing. And then hopefully your real estate agent can narrow that down to, okay, there's these neighborhoods within the cities, or maybe it's these 4 or 5 suburbs that sort of suit that bill. And now because you have an expert in the area who's willing to branch out and show you what life is like in all these areas, then that's about as good as it gets without physically going there and spending some time there. Because to be honest, you can go to a neighborhood that you've never been to one time and you don't know what it's like necessarily. You don't know what it was like that day, but if you go during the day, that might be totally different than if you go at night or on a weekend, right? Or vice versa, maybe you're like, oh, this place is like really sleepy and we really want like a cool, trendy place, where we can like go on walks and whatever, to have neighbors who are real active. But it depends on what time you go, right? So you or your real estate agent is going to have a pretty intimate understanding of the whole place, right? And so when you say, I want this kind of school, I want streets that are like this, and I want this kind of restaurants or a Target that's this close, whatever. Hopefully your real estate agent knows what they're doing and they can help you begin to take those steps. And they can make sure that you're looking in the right area, or more importantly, they're showing you in the right area. So after you're pre-approved and you've had that very lengthy and potentially, difficult conversation with your partner and your family, then you can begin to do virtual showings fundamentally with your real estate agent. And now that looks a few different ways, okay? There's a few different ways that can pan out. One would be you're doing a live showing with your real estate agent over Zoom or Skype or Google Hangouts or something, and you're both on the phone and you're looking at it in real time. So you can say, hey, can you take a video of that corner real quick? Can you look out that window? And that way you can direct what the showing actually is. It can be as close to you actually being there as possible. And then the other option would be that your agent goes through, maybe you're at work and you can't step away. Maybe your agent, because they do it full time, they can schedule a showing for 1 PM and you got to be working, and they can look at 4 houses in the afternoon while you're working, send over a bunch of videos, and then on the train or the bus ride home, or when you get home, you can be watching all these things. You can be saving a ton of time, and you can look at 4 houses in a matter of an hour instead of driving around all of them. And then you should be able to rather quickly get a sense of what kind of house you like, and hopefully your agent is pretty tuned into that. And another thing that a lot of people don't realize is houses smell different, right? And if you're not there in person, you don't know what the house smells like. And that can be a huge deterrent. So I would say make sure that your agent, right away when they walk in the video or in the Zoom chat or whatever it is, what does it smell like? Because that's your first impression. A little bit is what you see, but the smell, if it's less than ideal, that smell is going to be your number one reaction. Like right away, I don't know, this house doesn't smell very good. What's going on? Is there water? Is there a dead body? Hopefully not. But if you have an agent who can be upfront and honest about that and isn't just trying to sell you a house so they can get a commission, they want to find you the right house, then hopefully they can be sort of your conduit to how it actually smells. Okay, and another part to the virtual tour thing that I think is very, very important is the neighborhood. What is the neighborhood like? Okay, don't just buy a house based on the house. You wouldn't if you were there in real time. You would be driving up to the house and you would be seeing what the neighborhood is like. And you'd be making some determinations based on that before you even see the house. Okay, what's the neighborhood like? So be on the Zoom call as your agent drives around from house to house. I have a thing where I can put my phone up in the windshield of my car and it can look out on the street. And so you can literally drive down the street with me from house to house. Okay, that's pretty cool. And it will give you a sense of the neighborhood. And then aside from that, you can do some research on YouTube. Personally, I'm doing my best to get a super comprehensive virtual tour of as many neighborhoods as I possibly can in the Twin Cities. By the time this video is out, I have a few, but I intend to have more and more and more as time goes on. So if you're watching this in 6 months from when I film this, hopefully I have just an incredible catalog of all the neighborhoods in the Twin Cities. And you can begin to narrow down, okay, this is the spot that I like, or I like these 3 neighborhoods that you did tours of, and then maybe I can say, oh, if you like that one, you might also like this one. I haven't done a video for it yet, whatever. Okay, now comes probably the scariest part of the whole thing, which is making an offer on a house that you haven't even seen in person yet. But to be frank, in most markets, there is not enough time for you to do a virtual showing and then set up a second showing where you fly in from out of state before you make an offer. For the most part, houses just move too fast. And a second thing is, you don't even know if you're going to get the house that you make an offer on, right? You very well might make 10 offers before you find a house. So if you flew out from every one of those, for most people that would be prohibitively expensive and prohibitively time consuming. So the smart move is to make an offer on a house, and if by the 10th one you get accepted, then you fly out during the due diligence phase or the inspection period. So basically the same time that your inspector is doing an inspection, you go there and you do an inspection as well. And that way, you're not flying out for offers that you don't even get accepted. Only the ones that you actually do get accepted, you're going to go out and look at it and make sure that it's the house for you. And now, if just one extra trip is more money and more time than you have to fly out there, then I would say have your agent do a very, very thorough Zoom chat with you. And then also have a Zoom chat with the inspector. If you can, I would say it's entirely possible, and that's just something that you have to have understood by the inspector, like, hey, I'm going to have a live chat with you while you do this inspection. And likewise, you can have your agent go through a second time or whatever, and really, if you think, I wish I would have looked here, then you can. So hopefully you can say, hey, agent friend, please me if you're moving to the Twin Cities, hey agent friend, can you go look under the steps? We didn't look in that closet and I'm curious what that is. Okay, boom, there you go. Can you look behind the furnace? Yeah, you bet, here you go. Just certain things that in the first walkthrough, in the first video walkthrough, you might not think about looking at, but now you have it under contract, it's starting to get really real, and since you can't actually step foot in it, you can have a very, very thorough walkthrough so you are as sure as possible that in fact this is a house that you want to be buying. Okay, and after that 10-day due diligence phase, which is basically the inspection phase, you kind of have 10 days from when an offer is accepted to when you have to be done with the inspection phase. So after that due diligence phase is done and you've either seen it or done a very thorough virtual tour, now it's basically the same as any other home purchase. It's an appraisal and it's your closing date and it's your moving date, and that's kind of up to you, however that plays out. But the truth is, at that point, you better get packing, you better reserve a U-Haul or a Penske truck or whatever it is, and you better just start to get in motion because it's about to get real for you pretty fast, probably faster than you know it. And obviously you'd have to work through any kind of transfer or anything like that with your job, that whole thing. So that being said, it's not impossible. It certainly is difficult. It's probably harder than just finding one where you live, but it could even be potentially less time consuming for you, where your agent's doing a lot of the work for you, driving around, uploading these things to you, or doing the virtual tours for you. You can save time. You can be in the back of a taxi cab looking at it, and rather than having to drive around, with your agent and all that. So that being said, if you're moving to Minnesota, I would be very happy to be the person to help you do this. But what you got to do is get a hold of me. Call, text, email, leave a message on my website, jesselynchrealty.com, DM me on Instagram at jesselynchrealty, DM me on Facebook at jesselynch, whatever you got to do. If you got to send me a postcard from Tahiti, which is where you currently are, do it, and I will get back to you, okay? All right, I hope this video was helpful. Love you. Bye-bye.